Nobody cares, work harder. What exactly are we storing so we can make sure that all of that stuff aligns? And then from there, that solution's at their door, sometimes in a matter of an hour, kind of like pizza delivery. We're really proud of the fact that once we win a customer, we rarely lose them. They may start with 10 trailers and grow to 100 trailers. I only need about 75, 80% of what I think are the facts to make the decision.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Quiet Work Podcast. Today, we are going to talk about the invisible layer of the supply chain industry. I'm bringing in an expert. Jonathan, please introduce yourself and tell us about the company you represent.
So I'm the CEO of a company called Warehouse on Wheels. Quite simply, we provide flexible mobile industrial storage. We take the trailers that you see running up and down the highway when they're done with their over the road life, and we repurpose them so that folks can use them throughout their supply chain wherever they need just a little more space.
Wow.
Exactly.
How did you end up in that industry and what motivated you to start your own company?
Yeah, I was actually a customer. So I was trying to manage a warehouse for a small family owned business. I was the CFO, COO of a company that provided products into Walmart supercenters when
Hmm.
they were really in their heyday of building those in the early 2000s. And so we had, dozens of containers coming in from Asia, and we didn't know how to run the business. So they were coming in erratically. We were running out of warehouse space. And one night I looked up and I was renting 150 storage trailers. In
Wow.
fact, from someone that's still a competitor of mine here in greater Cincinnati. And so, in doing that and understanding the benefits of it, the value proposition that owner was realizing, I thought, there might be a business opportunity. And as I dug into it and understood it more, I saw there was a highly fragmented market. And so I started building Warehouse on Wheels in late 2017.
Incredible. And how did you come up with the name? Was it
Yeah.
because of the acronym that made sense or what was it?
Well, it's funny. So we started out with a much more complex name. We were called American Trailer Rental Group, ATRG, and that name stuck for a bit. But once I bought businesses in Canada and started expanding beyond America, I
Hmm.
think I had to step back and say, okay, what name best describes it? And through a couple other conversations, folks had referred to it as a quote unquote warehouse on wheels. And I thought, yeah, we can run with that. So did hire a marketing firm, let them do their work, but ultimately landed on the original idea, which was warehouse on.
Yeah, and I love that name. I think it's very catchy, and I could see you guys on all those expos and what have you with the wow experience for your client,
We call our podcast internal podcast the wow factor. So we're
the wow
definitely
fact.
milking it. We're milking it for all it's worth.
As you should, as you should. So, who do you primarily serve with your business?
Yeah. So we have over 6,000 customers across our
Wow.
37 locations, and we're serving everyone from Fortune 100 manufacturers and automotives, plastics, any number of areas through the retail chain. So think the big online e-commerce guys, the big
Hmm.
box retailers, all the way to the thrift store retailers and everyone in between. So it's a very diverse group. And think of it as anyone that manufactures something or distributes something at some point in their supply chain runs into a situation where they need just a little more space. And that's what we're.
Just a little bit more space. That's a great introduction to my next question, or segue into my next question is why would someone invest or choose an option of having a warehouse on the wheels rather than expanding a space in their traditional warehousing environment?
Yeah,
What is
I think it
the
starts
concern?
first with the concept that most folks don't want to build the church for Easter Sunday, if you will. So you don't want to build a warehouse that's too big, sort of the Goldilocks thing, just right. And inevitably, something happens within their supply chain. Shipments are late, pickups are late, inventory backs up. They decide to reconfigure the warehouse and they have a lot of infrastructure, racking and otherwise, that they've already invested in that they don't want to dispose of. And that's where our solution really fits. We're generally 2 to 4 times less expensive on a per square footage basis than traditional warehouse space, depending on what market you're in. We're a 30-day evergreen contract, so you don't have to sign a 5, 7, 10-year lease. And it really creates that pressure relief valve that I think so many of our customers who have been our customers for 2 decades before I even really controlled and was building the business. And it's a testament to the solution and how well it.
I like that. And I've moved a warehouse once or twice in my history, so I know how challenging it is when all of a sudden you have a shipment coming in and you're out of space. You don't know what to do. Obviously, some of the equipment that you hold there is quite expensive as well, so you can't put it at
Correct.
risk.
Mhm.
And then you have to get all of the crews included, people that you have to hire one time just to help you out move the warehouse. And in the first place, you have to find a bigger warehouse and then
Correct.
move it to there, which you need anyway a container, like most likely, to put the stuff in it and move it to the
Sure.
next location,
Mhm.
and that might be can be a nightmare. So I absolutely see the necessity of it, but that brings me to the next question: how
Mm.
safe is it if you have
Yeah.
equipment that is obviously worth some money and you
Mhm.
have to store it in that container on a warehouse on the wheels for a month or two, or
Yeah.
maybe a little bit longer? How safe, secure is that?
Yeah. So our basic philosophy is we want our trailers to show up to our customers ready to go to work. And by that, I
Right.
mean, I want it to be safe, dark, and dry.
Mm,
So a good sound asset to provide that structural support, that cover that's needed. And so that's really the way we frame how we approach our customers. And then from a security standpoint, oftentimes the trailers actually sit at the customer site. So it's got that
mm.
extra layer of security for the customer's facility. But in some instances, we will provide additional parking on our site, fully secured sites in your traditional sense of fencing, security cameras, that sort of thing, so that the assets are clearly protected.
Got it. That solves the conundrum here completely. My next question is: I assume that you're not working with local companies only, and there is
Mhm.
obviously a nationwide scale with 6,000 customers, and some of those, as you mentioned, Fortune 100 companies, large companies. If you could share a little bit more about the customer journey from the moment
Sure.
someone approaches you and they tell you what they need and how
Mhm.
much space, etc., how fast does it take for you to find the right solution, the right trailer, or storage option for them? Because sometimes they need maybe different containers, different sizes, etc. So how fast do you go about that, and what's the process? What does the process look like from a customer perspective or client perspective?
Well, we like to frame that entire customer journey in the phrase Ritz Carlton service at the Hampton Inn price. So we're all about white glove, customer intimate, making sure we understand the situation and find a solution that's fit for the purpose. And so basically, what happens is no one really plans for what we do. They don't plan for the shipment to be late or early or the warehouse dock to be full. And so when we get that call, they actually talk to the local person who's going to take care of them. So they don't
Right.
go into a call center. They don't, go through a bunch of messages and different people. They talking to the people that are going to help them. They ask them a few simple questions. How much do you need to store? How long do you need it for? What exactly are we storing so we can make sure that all of that stuff aligns. And then from there, that solution's at their door, sometimes in a matter of an hour, kind of like pizza delivery. But
Hmm.
generally speaking, customers' own operating systems don't generally move that fast. So you think of it as within 24 or 48 hours. But for our existing customers, where we're an approved vendor, where we're already been there and helped them with things, again, we can literally solve problems in a matter of a few hours.
Love that. Mr. Schultz, I believe was his last name, would be proud. I was just listening to the clips of the interview Patrick but
Mhm.
David did with the founder of Ritz Carlton,
Yeah.
which was, by the way, my first working environment in the United States,
Okay.
here locally in Rancho Mirage. And I
Mhm.
always remember that big whiteboard when you went to the Mensa to eat your lunch, and there was
Mhm.
vocabulary that you use in that location, that environment, the
Sure.
Ritz Carlton vocabulary,
Mhm.
and you can't use a simple language there. And for me, I came to the United States. I knew a little bit of English, but didn't have the feeling of the language, and that was
Right.
always challenging. I was so stressed out when I had to open the door for the first time and use words like certainly. I'm a little bit British, but people absolutely love that from
Yeah.
everyone. You knew immediately that, hey, this is Ritz Carlton. This is the final destination for today for you. And I like that you guys took it as well. That's the same hospitality approach and
Well,
customer
we think
centric
it
approach.
We think it's a simple way, and as you get to know me, I have all these, I call them Brooksisms, all my little sayings, but it just frames it. It gives you the real visual that, it's sort of like in retail, you might think of someone like Saks Fifth Avenue versus Walmart kind of thing.
Hmm.
We want to give you that high touch, customer intimate experience. We want to invest in the relationship and know your business. And we want to do that at a fair price. We don't want to overcharge and we don't want to undercharge. And so that's really why I chose to draw those two comparisons.
I like that. And a lot of enterprises out there and business owners, small or large, are using that method called Entrepreneur Operating System, EOS. Maybe you've heard about that as
I
well. And
have.
it's
Hmm.
big part of it is essentially having those core values that will apply to any position at the company because they're just congruent across the company. And that needs to be, especially if you're customer or client facing, you have to make sure that you stick to those because that's how you make the big decisions and the smaller decisions in the company. So I like that as well. And a good role model after all. I mean, Ritz Carlton
Absolutely.
can go wrong with that.
Mhm.
You've mentioned earlier that you serve over 6,000 customers. Did I get that number right? How did you approach the first 10 or maybe first 20 of them? How did you find them? How did you convince them to work with you? And how was it in the beginning?
It's very interesting because, as I mentioned, no one really plans for the service we provide. It's sort of an urgent need. But inevitably, everyone has some version of it going on within their business. And it
Mhm.
may be that they have rented 5,000 square feet down the road. And so they're using that as the fix. It may be that they have another local competitor of mine in there providing one or two trailers. And so, really, for us, it's about we want to build that trust first. So, we want to be there and invested in the relationship. So, when the time comes, we're top of mind. So, our approach really is first to give that goodwill, build that trust. And then we know when the time comes, we'll rise to the occasion. We're really proud of the fact that once we win a customer, we rarely lose them. They may start with 10 trailers and grow to 100 trailers, but they never fully go to zero in the form of they go to a competitor. We're very mindful of that customer retention and how important it is to really continue to nurture that relationship.
You've mentioned a keyword trust, which I like as well. How do you go about building trust with someone who you
Yeah.
approach or a potential vendor partner that you approach for the
Mhm.
first time? How do you approach it?
Well, the good thing is I have a basket full of endorsements from other people. And we actually are doing some content now on LinkedIn with a group I call my advisory board. So these are
Mm,
recently retired supply chain executives that have used our solution and that
mm,
know us. And so they're telling the world on our behalf that these are good guys and gals. They take care of you, they do what they say they're going to do. And that's really, I think, to me, the most powerful endorsement that I can put in front of the world and let them know that it's just not John Brooks saying it because I have a self interest in wanting you to rent trailers. I've earned that with our customers year in.
very interesting, and I love that approach. By the way, I think this is the best way, I opinion, the most effective way to become a paragon of reputation in any space you're in. If you have someone to vouch for you, that's definitely the best. And then obviously the work, the experience, the client experience speaks for itself as well once they
Absolutely.
become a client, obviously. And you've
Mhm.
mentioned that you rarely lose a client, so that speaks
Mhm.
for itself, especially at that volume. We now know how you got to the point you're in, how you get your first 10, 20
Mhm.
clients. Just one from a business perspective, how are you planning on going after or approach or how do you call it, acquiring? Maybe that's a better word.
Yeah.
The next 6,000 clients that
Yeah.
will trust you and stay with you for a long time.
Yeah, so our growth strategy is really grounded in a couple key pillars. There is a large population of mom and pop businesses that are similar to
Mm,
ours that really usually don't have an exit strategy. So they've
yes.
been very diligent in building a business, but really don't know what the next phase is going to look like. And so we're becoming the acquirer of choice. Again, of the 20 plus acquisitions we've done, I say confidently that 18 to 19 of those folks would very easily give us an endorsement and talk about how the ease of the process, the fairness of the process, how well we treated their teams post close. So there's the acquisition piece. Then there's the organic growth piece. We've developed a playbook, I like to call it, or an approach to actually going into a market and just simply planting a flag and going to work. We oftentimes bring relationships from other markets into that market. So pull through opportunities with customers. But more times than not, our boots on the ground are just out there shaking hands and kissing babies like a good politician and out there building the brand and solution awareness. And really proud of the way we execute those two pillars of the strategy.
I like that. And you've mentioned merger and acquisitions or acquiring different businesses.
Mhm.
Are those the mom and pop stores in any industry, or what's the acquisition strategy there? I mean, it's becoming very, very popular that I think someone said that there's 13 million small businesses that will change hands over the next
Mhm.
decade or two in the United States alone,
Right.
which is obviously quite a large number. Some of
Mhm.
them I hear it quite often on LinkedIn as well. And whenever I have a conversation that unfortunately after 30 or 40 years in the business, we'll shut our doors the moment I retire. So that happens as well. But what's your
Mhm.
essentially take on that, the current market of when it comes to merger and acquisitions and your own strategy?
Yeah, there's absolutely an opportunity, especially in our space, because we play in such a defined niche that the industry basically is made up of family-owned businesses. There's no
Mhm.
single player doing what we're doing at scale, and so that positions us well to be the acquirer of choice. And again, we work very hard to maintain the endorsement of those we acquire because that then feeds that engine as well. The community knows each other. You know, you may not be in the same city competing, but you know of the business in another city because at some point you probably had a customer call you and say, "Hey, you're helping me in St. Louis. I need help in Dallas." And so you facilitated that. And again,
Mhm.
people build that relationship. So, yes, absolutely. I agree. Those statistics that you're seeing make a lot of sense because you've got the baby boomers aging. And a lot of times you'll find in family owned businesses, the kids don't want it, so to speak. They don't connect the dots with all the spring break trips and the wonderful European vacations that that business paid for to the point where they want to actually get involved and engage in the business. So there is an opportunity.
Absolutely, 100%. I had an honor to interview some guests that were part of multi generational companies. One was is approaching sixth generation to take over, so
That's
that's over
amazing.
150 years.
Right.
And I just saw them on a podcast with Joe Rogan, and he brought
Mhm.
his daughter on the show, who is taking over with her brother, the company. So it was
Yeah.
great to see how the passing of the torch happens, and
Mhm.
obviously it's not an easy undertaking. It takes some guests had to hire. It shows how they hired an outside consultant to move in into their area to be essential in day-to-day operations, to have a third party perspective on, hey, I don't want to, I'm your father or mother, I don't want to be that person that will teach you how to do it, because I can teach you what I see from my perspective, but I would
Right.
like to have someone else to give their own opinion and guide you towards that best of your version. So that's definitely happening.
Mhm.
And since acquisition sounds like it's a big focus right now as well,
Mhm.
what's ultimately the goal for you?
Yeah, my vision right now is Warehouse on Wheels can have 100 locations and 100,000 trailers. So roughly
Mm,
3x from where we are today. There's a tremendous amount of white space that we don't currently service. There's a very robust pipeline of acquisition targets. And then
mm,
there's just the markets where we currently exist where we can continue to densify our presence there. So I'm very bullish on what we're doing here. This is my career at this point. I've signed on. We're going to see this thing through. So 100 locations and 100,000 trailers is where we're at.
yeah, sounds very reasonable. Is there a time frame for it, for that goal as
As
well?
fast as we can get there. So we're gonna go as fast as the good Lord will let us.
I love it. Is that you've mentioned content strategy as well, but
Mhm.
is there what was there a direct approach as well? Like, do you have a team that handles like direct response type of marketing combined with content, or what's the strategy to be visible online for you guys?
Yeah, so online, I mean, I'm probably like a lot of guys of my vintage, my age. This whole agentic search thing is just another layer. We thought we
Mm.
kind of had it with SEO and we kind of were starting to get it and understand it. And now we've blown it up with the LLMs and so forth. So, yes, that is absolutely part of what we're doing. But quite honestly, it is so much about our local market CEOs that run our various
Mm.
locations and the human connection they have with the warehouse manager, the plant manager, the folks on the front lines who are dealing with these issues. We absolutely have to do the tech part of it because we need to build brand and solution awareness.
Mhm.
But that human interaction, that trust that we're building by being there for them and answering that phone and delivering that ready to go to work asset, that's what's going to win.
I like it. It's a combination of online and offline. And I
Yes.
believe as well that AI or AI agents in the future, hopefully as well, won't ever replace that human to human interaction. And I hope they will
Sure.
remain human species that like to engage with other human species instead of robots and what have you. I mean, obviously, we all love technology, and I was listening to this morning before my first call to an episode of a podcast about Larry Ellison, who, by the way, we have a tennis tournament that he owns in happening in 2 weeks here in Indian Wells.
Hmm.
That is beautiful tournament, and he was in that episode. They were mentioning essentially the beginning of the internet and how he jumped on it and knew that this was
Hmm.
going becoming a thing where everyone else was hesitant and skeptical about it. And the same thing happens now with AI.
Hmm.
Survival of the fittest. You have to take things as they are, and this is the new path. This is the new internet almost, and you
Sure.
have to adopt. But I agree with you that it's always very very important to keep that human to human interactions intact as well. There.
Absolutely.
Yes. If you, John, had an opportunity to sit across the table from John, who's just starting out, what kind
Mhm.
of advice would you share with him for his journey?
Yeah. So, I've talked about in the past, early in my career, I think I lacked emotional intelligence. I was more
Mhm.
the bull in the china shop, sort of a type A guy, just hard charging and sort of let's just get to the goal. So I would definitely have told that guy a lot earlier to invest in sharpening your emotional intelligence.
Mm.
I'm proud of where I've come in that regard, but that could have saved me a few lumps on the head and maybe a few firings. Who knows? I like to tell people as much success as we've had here at Warehouse on Wheels and other ventures I've been a part of, I have been fired before. So, I'm definitely not perfect. So I think that's the key is just early on understanding the value of empathy, listening, seeking first to understand before you seek to
Mm.
be understood. I think that's really important. And it's sort of led to my motto as I kind of frame it these days, which is listen first, pray for wisdom, lead with courage, and own the outcome. And that
Oh,
owning the outcome is really, I think, critical for any leader in business and someone especially that's trying to build an organization is the buck stops with you.
absolutely. I love that. That's a good one. I have to write it down and reread it often. That line. Yes, I'm glad it's recorded and I'm gonna be doing the editing so I can get back to it. But that was super powerful. I felt it. I'll be curious to hear your take on risk taking. How do you approach risk taking in business and acquisitions that you do?
Yeah. I wouldn't say I'm a super big risk taker. I'm not the guy that started this in his garage by, running up credit card debt and doing all the, cool hustle things you read about online that guys say they do. But I would say it's calculated risk. So I'm a recovering CFO, is what I tell folks. I grew up in the Arthur Anderson world. I, never worked on Enron or income, but was through that whole collapse. And so I'm analytical by my nature. And so I want to study something, but the one part I think is the good balance is I only need about 75, 80% of what I think are the facts to make the decision. I'm
Mm.
not so analytical that I feel like I need to get to 90, 95%. And that's served me well.
I asked you that question specifically because the more I listen to you, you remind me of that one interview I listened with a billionaire founder. I forgot his name or her name. Maybe it was even a lady. But what stuck with me is that she started that conversation by saying that she hates taking risk. She absolutely hates taking risk. Everything needs to be
Mm.
calculated. And everyone who tells you otherwise has probably not been in the business for long enough to see that a lot of things are can be calculated. And yes, obviously there is some risk taking involved always, and
Right.
it is what it is. I think you mentioned the number 70%.
Something
So
like
that's
that.
that's a
Yeah.
good number. It's a good rule of
Mm.
thumb to have, because yeah, I mean you don't have to, like you said, put everything on one card and hope it's unless you're in your 20s and you're living a garage, your parents' garage somewhere. maybe
Yeah.
maybe
I
at
mean,
this point
hey,
you can.
if you can do that, roll the dice. Sure. Makes it interesting.
Absolutely. At this point, you can, and good luck with that. And it
Yeah.
works. It worked in several stories that we
Absolutely.
see, and all the
Absolutely.
devices that we have around you, right?
Mhm.
So it
Yeah,
it can
for
work.
sure.
I think Jeff Bezos said that that's the reason why Silicon Valley stood out and America is on the front end still when it comes to technology, because in Europe even in Asia, no one would even think about doing something like that
Yeah,
and
that's true.
raising some other people's money and taking all those bets on
Yeah.
their money that is not even theirs, right? And it's
Mhm.
just insane. But they did it so many times, and out of those thousands of times, a few worked out really, really well, and now we are
Correct.
where we are. So yeah,
Mhm.
there's um, two sides of that coin for sure. Lastly, what are you, John, excited about the most? What do you see in the industry happening over the
Mhm.
next couple of years? Maybe this
Sure.
year, maybe over the next decade. Anything that stands
Mhm.
out for you?
Yeah, well, my first hope is that we're nearing the end of a freight recession, or I even call
Ooh,
it a larger industrial recession that we're experiencing here in the States. I think with the chaos of tariffs, with the uncertainty and the financial markets of, if you're not tied to AI, up until recently, you really weren't probably winning in the public markets. And so I think seeing some of that stabilize, normalize, I'm excited because when we're just on that little bit of a path with a small tailwind, it's really powerful to what we're trying to accomplish here at Warehouse on Wheels. We've been very successful through multiple economic cycles. So having a more stable, more normal economic cycle would be exciting for us. I think we would be probably at this point, because we've come through the downturn, could be jet fuel because we've sharpened ourselves. We've bettered the business. It's where it needs to be to really take that next level of growth. And so I'm excited about that. And then just, I mean, we're in the most blessed place in the world. I mean, if anybody has an opportunity to succeed, it should be us. And so with that at our back, I mean, no matter what comes, we can deal with it and we can be successful in a number of different.
and I add a plus one to your hope. I think that's for any industry out there. It would be great to hear people complain less for a bit in general.
Amen, said the choir. Yes.
Yeah,
Well, I have
I
this
think
thing I have this little small in my office. I wrote on the window with a whiteboard, UH, and it's just at the bottom of the window where I can see it when I'm sitting at my desk and feeling sorry for myself. And it stands for nobody cares, work harder. And so it's just a reminder to me that, okay, whatever problems you have are probably first world problems. So check yourself.
exactly.
And then, secondly, spending time in that world isn't going to make anything better. So I look over to look out the window and sort of contemplate. And at the bottom is those initials to remind me that nobody cares.
Nobody cares, work hard, yes. And it's always good to have a perspective of what the previous generations had to deal with. And I
Absolutely.
think it's a lot easier that than that, and definitely not life threatening what we go through most of the
Absolutely.
times. So I agree with you, and that's a good one. Well,
Mm.
John, I have nothing else to say other than to wish you that 3x happening faster than you can ever imagine. I hope that all of the travels that you do are going to be extremely fruitful, and I'm going to see that huge success story on LinkedIn feed, and then invite you back on the podcast to talk about the how do you feel after 3xing a company so fast and then reaching
Absolutely.
that big milestone. It was an absolute honor to connect again and record that podcast episode with you, and I'm looking forward to staying in touch over the next years to come.
Absolutely. Matt, I love what you're doing. I love the content. I'm honored to be here. It is truly an honor. So thank you for that.